Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Tennis Weekly with Joel, Kim, and Chris. On today's Tour Catch Up,
Auger-Aliassime wins his second title of the season,
USA cruise as GB bow out to Japan.
and Belgium escape Davis Cup default.
Chris, today is the 3rd of February, and we are here to catch up on the week in tennis at Tennis Weekly HQ. The dust has settled on Melbourne and back on the ATP and WTA Tour grind, and it's also been the beginning of the journey to the Davis Cup. Davis Cup qualifying was this week for the men as well. And Chris, you got to go to what was it, Denmark versus Serbia?
It was Denmark versus Serbia. I will make it clear, Novak Djokovic was not there. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail later.
So did the attendance go from like full house to like 6 people?
Well, thankfully it was in Denmark, and they're a big fan of Holger Rune. So there are about 10,000 people in one of Denmark's biggest indoor stadiums. So when they went down 2-0, let's just say on the second day, I was worried how it would, well, if people would turn up and how they'd react. But it all went well in the end. The comeback was complete. And if Djokovic had have been there, well, maybe they wouldn't have got the result they wanted. So cheering either way.
Well, we're going to be diving into all of the Davis Cup qualifying action, all the action as well from the ATP and WTA tours. We're going to be talking about Novak Djokovic in the second half as well, about his injury, and we're going to be talking about Madison Keys and what is next for her. What tournament is she going to face? Because there's been a bit of controversy in Dallas, but more on that to come. First of all, we've just got to say, crowdfund update. I know a lot of our listeners are probably sick of this, but we have a very special message because we've done it. We've completed our crowdfund target. Big thank you to everyone. We have now reached our £2,000 target. We're actually over our target, £2,070. Look, see, I'm getting my words mixed up because I'm so excited. We're on £2,070 at the moment, which honestly is an incredible achievement, and is all down to our wonderful listeners. Honestly, we are blown away at Tennis Weekly HQ. We're all sort of jumping for joy when we did hit that marker, because it means so much to us, and it really is going to help us grow and develop into the 2025 season.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, it's so generous, and we're so happy about it. And because we've obviously hit our target and we're so happy with that, this will be our last crowdfund announcement. We will be closing it, so you won't be hearing too many of these. Well, this will be the final time we mention it. But if it was on your to-do list and you didn't quite get round to it, there is still time. If you'd like to top us up to even greater heights, you'll have until the end of the week. Then we will close it, because we're so thrilled with how we've done so far.
Yes, and the link to support us, if you haven't done so already, is www.gofundme.com/tennis-weekly-2025. We will put that link in the description. So if you are feeling generous, if you haven't done so yet and you wish to show your support, then honestly, it would mean the world to us. So yeah, it will be open. The GoFundMe will be open till the end of the week. So you have till then. But big thank you to everyone who has supported us and made us reach our target. Honestly, it's absolutely incredible. But let's move on with the show and look back, because we are back into Tour Catch-Up mode. None of those round by round episodes from the Australian Open. We're going to be looking back on the week on the tour after what went down in Melbourne. And Chris, what caught your eye this week on the tour?
I mean, I've almost forgotten how these episodes work, Joel. I forgot that we had to do something.
I was a little bit nervous coming into it, being like, do I remember how to do this?
Yeah, like, what is our news of the week? And thankfully I stumbled upon something today with Petra Kvitova. She appeared on my Instagram feed to share the wonderful news that she is coming back to tennis. And I'm not sure all of us thought that. She's 34 years of age. Not saying you can't do it. People have done a lot after that age as well. But she's announcing she's coming back, and sooner than we thought. She's planning to return in Austin, in Texas, at the end of February. That begins on the 24th of February. She said she just missed the game, and she's so excited to actually come and play some more tennis again. So that's some really nice welcome news. I'm not sure everyone was expecting it. Were you, Joel?
No, that's sort of come out of nowhere, and yeah, as you said, like it feels very, very sudden, but it's also very exciting, because I think having Petra Kvitova back on the tour, again, it's another
dangerous floater.
Yeah, and another sort of generational battle I feel I could look forward to with also all the kind of young guns coming through at the moment as well.
Yeah, and it keeps Azarenka company. I feel like they're sort of the last two sort of maybe from that generation
definitely.
who are actively playing on the tour, who've won slams. So that was very, very welcome news. And she has a lot of fans. And so we get to see her on the grass. So maybe it's one last grass court season.
Yeah, really looking forward to that. Let's see how Petra Kvitova gets on. I mean, my story of the week, I really enjoyed this, Chris. Danielle Collins, she posted on her Instagram that she she delivered on a 5-star holiday promise, let's say. She put a picture up of herself in the Bahamas. Now, this all relates back to a bit of hoo-ha that happened in Melbourne with her and the crowd, because she kind of thanked the fans for paying her bills with her prize money. And she said she would be using it on a 5-star trip. Well, we know the location now. And I'm not going to lie, looking at the background with the beach, the white sands, the umbrella, the parasol, it does look beautiful. It does look 5 stars.
It does. And she actually pulled out of the Qatar Open, I believe, and she pulled out of a couple of places. So maybe she does quite like this 5-star resort. Will she be spending all of the money?
Hang on, is there a secret Bahamas Open that I don't know about on the ITF circuit?
Yeah, well, maybe there is a W15 tournament, but I'm not sure she'd earn as much as the 150,000. Yeah, beach tennis. Maybe that's the new thing.
Yeah, no, really enjoyed that. I love the sort of ongoing nature. I just wonder whether there are going to be some fans next time at the Australian Open who are going to remember this, and they're going to come with a funny sign that maybe references this moment, because I hope this beef isn't done just yet. I feel like there's more to come.
She does love a back and forth. I feel this is an ongoing sort of villain narrative. She's sort of maybe
she loves to be the
through.
Pantomime villain. Yeah, she loves to be the pantomime villain. But yes, let's move on and look at what is going on the ATP first of all. And the big news this week has all been about Davis Cup qualifiers. Lots of action, lots of countries in action. Less said about GB, the better. We'll get onto that in a sec, because they were defeated away to Japan 3-2. I mean, just some of the results. We had Spain come through 3-1 against Switzerland. Argentina defeated Norway. Australia defeated Sweden. Now, one of the results, Chris, we need to talk about, and actually it's the first result we need to talk about, and not because of the tennis, but because of a specific incident that I don't actually think has ever happened before in tennis, or if it has, listeners, please let us know. Chile versus Belgium. Now, Belgium won this tie 3-1, so they are through. But the big talking point of this was in the singles match between Christian Garin and Zizou Bergs, because they had a little bit of an altercation when they were on the changeover at a very pivotal time in the match that resulted, it resulted in Christian Garin refusing to play because he got knocked over by his opponent, Zizou Bergs. And the umpire wasn't really handling any of it. And it ultimately ended up in a default, essentially.
I mean, it was like nothing I've seen before, Joel. I mean, we both watched it and I've watched various angles of it. And I cannot understand how in the rule book this actually is allowed, and whether this is sort of a weird sort of incident that sort of falls between the cracks of the rules, because we've seen Djokovic, hit a ball without intention, and it obviously hit an official at the US Open. He was disqualified. This is a player actively, basically KOing, like knocking over Christian Garin, Zizou Bergs, and whether there is intent or not, you can't floor your opponent just because you were excited. And when you talk about fault, I just think it's so unbelievably strange when he has actual injuries. It was to his face. This is a non-contact sport. So I just think they need to make their mind up on how they talk about this from the rule perspective. And the official word, and this was taken from the umpire who was umpiring this match. And the thing that I also find, quite strange about this is that when it comes down to, Carlos Ramos, he's got so much experience. I was not expecting as an umpire that he would be someone who I think would get something so wrong, in my opinion. He said it was an accident. I'm not sure that actually should have too much bearing, because that has not had bearing in previous things that we've seen. Yeah. The protocol was that they first take care of the injured player with a medical team. And then what happened was they judged that he was fit to play. So despite being knocked over and suffering injuries to his face, they decided he was fit to play still. So apparently you're able to injure your opponent, but you're not able to injure a member of the crowd or spectators, which seems very strange. And then because the doctor, who was apparently a neutral person, said he could play, the fact that he did not play meant that there were points penalties that were given. And that meant that because he didn't play after a certain period of time, it then became 1 point, it became one game, and then it became the match because it was 6-5 in the third set. So I'm so shocked by this.
It was quite a delicate moment as well. I was very surprised. Like, regardless of what the umpire and sorry, the referee was saying, I was very surprised that Garin kind of didn't continue, but I sort of can understand it at the same time. Is there a case of like, this is just one of those things that, as I say, I can't ever remember this happening. So regardless of how experienced like someone is, like a Carlos Ramos, like there's not many examples I'm imagining he's got in his brain to kind of reference to know what the kind of correct outcome here. And is it something maybe that, the ITF maybe need to look at in terms of updating or introducing new rules in terms of what happens in these moments? Because it really felt like a kind of what happens next kind of situation.
It really did. And especially when it's for your country, it just feels like it's particularly unfortunate because, I get that people are hyped up during this, but there is no excuse for the fact that, and then the Belgium team have put out a statement saying they've got the full support to Zizou and the Belgium team and all of this sort of thing. And I just think it's nuts that this has happened and crazy that it ended in this sort of way because, it doesn't matter if someone is a nice person. If you've inflicted a physical injury on your opponent, whether intentional or not, if you hit a ball down the other end of the court and on a serve and they turned their back and it hit them pretty hard, you could get disqualified for things like that, I'm pretty sure. So I did not like this. I do not like all the people trying to protect different outcomes. And I don't really like the fact that it's put on Garin that he didn't choose to continue because I would feel pretty rattled by the fact that I didn't see this coming. I have been knocked over. It is a really tight point in the match. And it just makes you feel very uncomfortable in the environment because this has happened, whether he knew it was intentional or not. I've never seen anything like it. But, would you have given it a disqualification? And do you think there is actually something in this appeal that's going to go in?
I'm not sure. I sort of understand it from a point of view, like, it doesn't matter if it's an accident. And we've seen with kind of, like with tennis ball hitting incidents, like it doesn't matter if it hits someone in the crowd, it really should be a default. So on that kind of line of argument, when it comes to, it's not a tennis ball, it's your opponent, arguably an even worse situation, then I do think there are grounds for it to be a default.
And it's a body blow, which is the thing that's so crazy. It's like a physical contact as opposed to like...
That's what I feel like is separate from other incidents I've seen where, just simply like two players are in the zone, they're not really thinking about their opponent kind of walking to the net. And also sometimes like the gap between the net post and the chair umpire is not that wide. So that sometimes you both go for it at the same time and maybe those situations are right. But as you said, it felt like there was a little bit more needle and a little bit more intent. And, even though like you can understand it deep in the third, playing for your country, it just felt like it had stepped over a mark and boiled over and it didn't really have a place on the tennis court.
And if you have that level of energy and you're hyped up in that way and you're not able to control it, I believe that's on you. I believe that's on Bergs to control his emotions to the point that he isn't actually putting other people at risk and danger. So I think tensions are high during these things, but I would like a proper apology to be done to Christian Garin about this because I think he's been completely wronged in this situation. And I just think it's not what this sort of tennis tournament, the Davis Cup, your country's competing is about. And we had a couple of other incidents, didn't we? Another one that we'll talk about was Arthur Fils playing for France against Brazil. This was against Seyboth, who was not happy with him. And it's more umpire sort of decisions that are a bit confusing because Fils did go to sort of like tube is what it's called when you aim a shot at your opponent who's at the net. Wild got out of the way of it and the umpire said it touched his racket. So this ended up with quite an aggressive scene at the end of the match. And I think that Wild felt that Fils should have said, oh, I know that didn't hit your racket. But Fils just said to the umpire, this is on the umpire's decision. It's not on me. So where are we standing on this? Like, are the umpires
Oh,
getting it wrong? Would you call it? Should the player be the person saying it? Because with Iga, when she had the double bounce, no one was really giving her too much of a hard time around that.
no. I yeah, I think that I think the umpires need more support in terms of technology and to help make those decisions. I think it's really hard in Davis Cup where you are playing for your country, and that might kind of make your decision making actually a little bit more biased and a little bit more, like trying to maybe be a bit sneaky and get away with things. So I just think that, if we've got the technology and it's there to be used, should the umpires have these moments so that we can have this technology so that they can able to make these decisions so it doesn't fall on the players, because it feels like that is another sort of tension point that could boil over and lead to potentially altercations that could have been avoided.
Well, that would have been avoided, I guess, at the US Open, because if there was no shot hit, then it would mean that the review could happen. Because with Emma Navarro, because she played the next point, even though the ball had double bounced, she wasn't able to actually call for the review. Whereas this could be 100% a review because either he did hit it or he didn't hit it. And then you could definitely check that. But there are these different rules from Grand Slams to the Tour to Davis Cup. It isn't all the same. So with this one, it's just a shame when it's not energy that's fueled into a positive vibe. It actually sort of left a little bit of a bitter taste in a lot of the players and maybe the supporters' mouths around this, especially if you're from Chile or maybe from Brazil.
And I mean, just moving on, some of the other results we had Austria come through against Finland 4-0, Czech Republic through as well. One team that isn't through is Great Britain. Now they lost 3-2 to Japan and they were in a winning position, Chris. They were 2-1 up, and I thought going into the singles, that's a really strong position to be in. And it was a little bit disappointing. I thought Jacob Fernley was going to defeat Nishioka and we were going to be going through. He had such a great singles match against Nishikori, and then the doubles team came up trumps as well. But yeah, GB just falling at the last hurdle.
Oh, it was tough, wasn't it? Because there was a lot of hope for the team.
Yeah.
It's a shame when this happens. I also think that everyone did a really good effort. I think that win for Fernley over Nishikori was a really great result. But he is a really great player and he's able to bounce back, and he's got that level of class and quality about him. So, I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, we did get quite lucky in that doubles. It was a very close affair, 7-6, 7-6. So, I mean, it could have gone a bit awry a bit sooner. So nothing is in the bag. And I think definitely I learned that this weekend when Serbia were 2-0 up. You can never think you're going to win it. And even if you are ahead, it doesn't mean you're going to get the win.
No, and I mean that the stadium they played the Japan match in, it was beautiful. It was lovely. I love these. I feel like in Davis Cup you can get tennis in the random arena venues that can look stunning.
It's
on
fun,
TV.
isn't it? And one of my favorite venues where we went to for the Nordic Open in Stockholm at Kungelinga Tennishallen. Something I just thought I have to tell you. I know that Kim will love this, but John Peers played singles in the dead rubber against Leo Borg. John Peers does not play singles. He has not recorded a professional win at singles.
Wow.
He did lose that, but only just to Leo Borg. And his career high ranking was like 456 or something like that. So this must have been some sort of a bet that went down the Australian team. I think they were having fun with it potentially, or maybe everyone else wanted to rest, but I've never seen that before.
That does sound something
like a forfeit.
Yeah. Who was like, who wants to play it? And hey, maybe John Peers, he was keen to get back onto a singles court.
Maybe it's time for a comeback.
But some very interesting matchups. But we are through Davis Cup qualifying. All the teams that win, they're through and march on. Who knows who will become Davis Cup champion? We'll find out, of course, at the end of the season. I mean, moving on, Montpellier, the 250 indoor event, was also on this week. Felix Auger-Aliassime, he clinched the Montpellier. Now, that is his second title of the season. He defeated Kovacevic 6-2, 6-7, 7-6. This was an impressive performance from FAA because after losing that second set tiebreak, I thought this was going to be classic FAA and he was going to go and bottle it.
I wasn't confident at that point, and I think most of his fans probably wouldn't be, because he does have a an unfortunate habit of being able to lose a match from any position, or no matter how well he is playing. So I think that's probably why he sort of dropped to his knees in celebration. I just had to remind myself this is a 250 and Davis Cup week. No
Yeah,
one
what is
is
that about?
playing.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't really like it.
Because FAA turned down playing for Canada to essentially, or turned down playing for his country to essentially play for himself. Is he within his right to do that, do you feel?
I think it's a bit strange when it's not necessarily done in a way like Jack Draper has done, who said that he's prioritizing his body. Obviously, the Australian Open was a big thing, but he did say prior to the season starting that he wasn't going to be competing in the Davis Cup, so, well, for the first time of the year at least. So I think it's always a strange one, especially, for a 250 event. It's not like you're skipping it for something bigger. And normally, this isn't a situation where you can skip it to play that week because you're physically fit. And most people would say, if my country need me, I'm the top player, I'll be there, because Denis Shapovalov also wasn't playing. And so it does make it a bit strange because celebrating this victory when pretty much everyone who didn't make the cut for Davis Cup is there, or they're not able to play, like, the likes of Rublev, who's obviously not able to play because Russia are not allowed in the Davis Cup. So then you have situations where, like, David Goffin is seeded at this. So it's not necessarily the biggest triumph or necessarily worth it. But I mean, maybe picking up titles is what matters more. But I did find it a little bit in poor taste, the level of celebration, considering his country lost, probably because he wasn't playing at the same time he was winning a 250 in France.
Yeah, and it's interesting. His finals record, he lost his first eight, didn't have a good run when he was reaching finals, but he's been 7-2 since. So it definitely has been a bit of a flick of the switch there when he's come to those finals. And yeah,
racking up the titles, isn't he?
Yeah, I'd say regardless of kind of the situation, he's obviously made the most of it. And as I say, like, to see him actually kind of come up clutch in that final set, I think was good, because I think we've seen in finals before where when he's put in so much effort, maybe, as I say, in that second set, in that tie break, he's normally gone on to lose that third. So an impressive victory from that point of view.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the fact that he has turned that head-to-head around in finals is great. We would love to see him win some more matches at slams. Yes. And that's one of the tricky things, is that he's not peaking at the right times. And I'm not sure the week after a slam is the best time to peak either.
It's sort of like he shouldn't really be in this spot, or like he's better than this. Yeah. He's better than this spot.
And I'm sure he will get to a point where he wouldn't have to play a 250 after the Australian Open, and then he would play for his country and doesn't need the ranking points. So I understand why the decision was made. I don't necessarily agree with it, but either way, we like seeing Felix winning.
Well, let's move on to the WTA Tour action. There were no Billie Jean King Cup qualifiers this week. God, that's quite a mouthful, isn't it? But we did have a couple of tournaments, including the tournament in Linz, the 500 event in Austria. Now, Alexandrova won this in 3 sets against Yastremska. This is the biggest title of Alexandrova's career. And I mean, what a difference a couple of tournaments make, Chris, because the last time we were speaking about Alexandrova, she lost to Emma Raducanu, I think, in round 1 of the Australian Open. Like, unforced error fest, like left, right and centre. I felt like this was the story of that match. And then she comes up with this, incredible run in Linz, defeated Muchova in the semis, Yastremska in the final. Yeah, really, really good tournament. What do you make of Alexandrova at the moment, in terms of, like, how did she go from, what she was putting out at the Australian Open to putting this together?
Well, she's very dangerous on serve. She's probably got one of the best serves on the tour. Lots of aces, lots of free points. Indoors, probably a little bit better than she is outdoors. Really good on the grass. So I think maybe a slow Australian Open court might not be her best surface. I also think that the longer a point goes, the less likely she is to win it. So, if she's a bit off and Raducanu was able to keep her moving, keep the points going, it does make you think that that's probably why a result like that would not be good for her, or a player like that wouldn't be a great matchup for her. But indoors, I mean, where all the conditions are perfect, it feels like she was just really hitting well, because for Muchova to lose a set 6-love against her, I mean, That was such a surprise to me. I thought this was at the Muchova Open. I thought she would just be walking, handed the Upper Austria Muchova, ladies title, but did not happen in that way at all. And Yastremska coming through to the final as well. It's good to see her having some form because she obviously reached a semi-final at the Australian Open and then kind of dropped off the map a little bit, was riding off the coattails of that result. So seeing some players who maybe haven't had too much form do well is always great. I did think that Clara Towson might be making it a double Danish victory, though. I thought maybe she could push on. She's had a lot of form, but are you surprised by some of the finalists we saw this week?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. I do think, Towson's been in very good form. I mean, we speak about the fact that she's only played, defeated Madison Keys this season. She's a very good competitor, but Yastremska as well, similarly. And, maybe a little bit streaky at times, but certainly a very competitive final and Alexandrova coming through. I mean, a player who I feel like is always sort of there or thereabouts particularly in the 250s on the tour. Elise Mertens in Singapore. Now she won the title out here. I think it was her 9th overall career title. She defeated Anne Lee 6-1, 6-4 straight sets. A good week for Elise Mertens. I mean, I feel like these are the sorts of weeks where players like her can, I'd say, rack up some points and possibly rack up a title at the end of it.
And I was also quite surprised that, 9 titles. There aren't many players on the tour who've won 9 titles. So she does get and Monastery
gets it done in these moments.
She won Monastery a few times. She's won, I think, Hobart a few times. It is the 250s that she tends to get the results in. So, I mean, impressive to get that sort of number of titles when you're not necessarily the highest ranked player on the tour. And I mean, quite a big draw to come through as well. So, I mean, there was a few big names in here. Kalinskaya was the number 1 seed and she had to retire, unfortunately. And I think that would have probably been a bit more of a competitive final. But I mean, at the same time, I feel like going to this season, it is just so wide open because so many different players are playing well. And it's not necessarily just the people who are at the top of the game.
And I mean, Raducanu was seeded, but she did go out in the first round to Buxa of Spain. It was like over 3 hours. Like another really tough examination. I feel for Raducanu, not able to just get over the line, but still, promising nonetheless. I know Buxa can be quite a tough competitor on her day. But another. I think almost like the positive is that Raducanu was just able to stay on the court for that long, without coming out with any sort of injury or, dare I say, even in retirement.
Just happy that Raducanu's committing to being on a tennis court. That's all that matters. Match practice at this point.
Exactly. Commitment. Right. We're going to take a quick break now. Do join us in the second half where we will be discussing Novak Djokovic out until the clay season, what new Grand Slam champion Madison Keys' next event will be, and we look ahead to a trio of 500s in Dubai, Dallas, and Rotterdam. So do not go anywhere. Welcome back to the Tennis Weekly podcast, and it's time, as always, to kick off the second half with another game. The game is back. Par for the Courts is back. We had one at the start of the season, then we went on to Australian Open duty. But yes, Chris, Par for the Courts is back, and it's a solo edition for you.
And is it a Joel's game? Is it a higher or lower, or is it a?
It's going to be Par for the Courts solo edition, and I've actually saved this up from the Australian Open. No, so I saw this at the Australian Open. I thought, this is a doozy. This is a doozy for you and our listeners. So I'm really interested to see how you do this. And the topic I have for you and our listeners this week is this. So here we go. There's a little bit of a setup here. Right. For the first time since 2003, 2004, 4 American men have reached round 4 at consecutive Grand Slams. So that was the 2024 US Open, the 2025 Australian Open, and the 2003 US Open and 2004 Australian Open. And I would like you to name me as many of those Americans that reached round 4 in any of those events. I have counted them up, and I think my maths is correct. There are 13 Americans in total.
13 Americans have made it to round 4. Men
across those
women?
events. Just men.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm going to set par at. I think it's quite tricky. I'm going to set the par. Should we go over 50%?
I think I can get 50.
Okay. Well, let's go for 8. Let's go for 8. It's quite tricky. I think the names from back in the day, I almost want to give you double points for those because some of them are quite tricky. But let's see how you go.
Right. Well, I'll go for the low-hanging fruit first.
Okay.
I'll go for someone who did particularly well recently at the Australian Open. We'll go for Ben Shelton.
That is correct. Yes, Ben Shelton is on the list. Round 4, 2025 Australian Open.
And I'm going to go for, well, I've got to go for Taylor Fritz.
Yes, Taylor Fritz is on the list.
Tommy Paul has been having some deep runs at slams, so I'm sure he appears at, well, probably maybe 3 times.
He appears 2024 US Open, 2025 Australian Open. Yes. So that's 3 correct answers.
Not Wimbledon. I'm surprised by that. I thought he played Carlos there. Maybe that was round 3. But TFO has also made it.
TFO is correct. 2024 US Open.
So now it gets a little trickier. How many have I got?
So that's 4. So you're halfway there to 8.
4th round.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope I don't look stupid for this. But I'm going to go for... I think Alex Michelsen did make it to round 4 just now. And we got Alex Michelsen.
Alex Michelsen is a correct answer, yes. He is on the list. So 2025 Australian Open. You have 3 of the 4 from there. You've still got 0 from 2003 US Open, 2004 Australian Open. But yes, Alex Michelsen on the list. You have 5.
Right. Again, I hope I'm not looking particularly silly. But did Lerner Tien make it to round 4?
He did. Very good. So you are now 4 of 4 on the 2025 Australian Open. So that's 6 correct answers.
So now this is a bit trickier. I've said a lot of the obvious ones, I think, right, Joel?
Indeed.
I'm trying to think if...
But there are still some...
Christopher Eubanks, did he do
still
something
some big
at Wimbledon?
Names. So I'm looking for 2024 US Open, 2003 US Open, or 2004 Australian Open. So any American player.
I've got this completely wrong as to what the question was. So it's not of the last 4 Grand Slams. It's...
No. Just consecutive US Open, Australian Open, 2024 to 2025, and then 2003 to 2004.
Oh, okay. So then I probably should say Andy Roddick.
So you probably shouldn't say Christopher Eubanks, but yes.
No, I should say Andy Roddick.
But you should say Andy Roddick. That is
things
a
are
correct
going
answer.
Quite a lot better now. I think I know a little bit more about what we're dealing with.
There is one player from 2024 US Open you have not named, but all the others are from back in the day.
I feel like it might be Marcus Giron, but I don't want to say that yet because I'm a bit nervous. So I'm going to go for...
You're one away from reaching par.
Oh, am I? I'm going to go for... Surely John Isner has done something.
John Isner?
Oh, no, maybe he's the wrong age. Wait, oh. Well, I'll go Marcus Giron first.
Marcus Giron? It's an incorrect answer, Chris. It's an incorrect answer. You were one away from reaching par, but sadly...
Should I have gone John Isner?
Marcus Giron was wrong. If you had said to me John Isner, you would have also been incorrect.
Unlucky. I was very confident, but I think I thought it was players who'd reached the 4th round in the last year. So maybe when I understood what had happened... I hadn't really been thinking about those players. So please tell me who I could have had if I'd have understood the question.
Of the recent ones, you got all of them. You got 7. You got you were just missing
I'll take
one
something
name.
from that. That's
you were just missing one name. So you said to me Tommy Paul, Taylor Fritz, Ben Shelton, Francis Tiafoe. You got Lerner Tien and Alex Michelsen. Brandon Nakashima
Had he? Well, good for him. Kim will be thrilled.
Yep.
She would have got him.
2024 US Open round 4. And then from back in the day, you could have got Andy Roddick, Andre Agassi.
I was going to go Jeanette Pre, but I didn't say that.
You could have given me Robbie Jeanette Pre.
Steve
James
Johnson.
Blake.
No.
Not
James
Steve
Blake.
Johnson.
I should
Great
have thought
shout,
about
though.
him.
And Todd Martin and Taylor Dent.
Taylor Dent. I remember Taylor Dent, the original Taylor. But
there you go. There you go. That's your lot.
You need to have knowledge of both recent and 20 years ago. So I quite like that. It's a confusing one, but I think let us know how you did and let us know if you understood what we were doing.
Yes, listeners, let us know how you got on in our latest path for the courts. I feel like Kim is just sort of shaking her head that you didn't get Brandon Nakashima. Maybe next time that she's on, we're going to have to address that situation.
Yeah, probably.
Right, let's move on to the Tennis Weekly mailbag. As always, the question in our mailbag this week is this: Hi Joel, hi. Hi, Joel, Kim, and Chris. I'm a big tennis fan and live in Austin, and was very disappointed to hear that Madison Keys is not able to play the event, and it's because she won the Australian Open. Surely this makes no sense, and it really feels like the WTA are shooting themselves in the foot once again. What do we think?
Oof, well, I feel like maybe this was sent in anonymously because of quite punchy ending there. The WTA shoot themselves in the foot again, but I mean,
I feel like they're shooting themselves in both feet.
Yeah, I mean, they are, especially for this tournament. What I think people need to know is that it's not because she won, it's because of where her ranking is now. So for these tournaments, there are very specific rules. And so, for example, when it comes to a 250, it has to be weeks where there's only a 250, one top 10 player may play. And they'd already committed to that player being Jessie Pegula. She was the player who committed. And at the time, Madison Keys was ranked at 21 when the agreement was made that she'd be able to play. So what happens now is, because there are two top 10 players, you go to the original player you made the agreement with. She was already committed to the event. So it is a very strange one. They have changed the rules around 250s. There are some exceptions. If you won the title, you're able to defend it, and then a top 10 player is able to play. But I mean, it's not good, is it? It's a big shame because you're not really supposed to play 250s if you're ranked inside the top 30, unless you're defending champion, you're from the home country, or you're ranked 11 to 30, and then there are exceptions if you're from the home country or you've won it previously. So, I mean, it's a bit mad. There are 2 exemptions a year where you can do it. Very hard to understand, but in short, it's silly.
It's silly. It stinks as well. I think we've seen a larger trend over the last few seasons of the priority given to big tournaments. They're being made longer. The tours feel like they're the most lucrative, so they want them to last as long as possible. Yep, I completely understand that, but it feels like it's been at the detriment of the smaller events, like the 250s.
On the WTA side, right? Definitely.
Yeah. And these are great spectacles and these are great events. And it feels like you're just removing, like you're adding another thing that can remove star power from, what can really make or break an event, really, in terms of, their marketing, their ticketing. And it feels, really sad that, like, for someone like Madison Keys, who, is going to be on a feel good, is going to be in a feel good moment. She will want to carry on the momentum. First opportunity she feels that she can get out on the court, and she can't do it.
And also, I think maybe one thing I'll say is I don't necessarily think that the tournament should have announced this necessarily in this way, just because obviously they do want to make it clear that they don't agree with the rules. And actually, the tournament director did actually say, while we wish the top 10 rule didn't apply to our tournament, we respect the rules of the WTA. I mean, when you say something like that, it does make it quite clear.
Like the WTA is like, this is getting put on the red list.
Well, it might do, because I think also for Jessie Pegula, you also don't want people to be disappointed that you're the top 10 player who's there.
That's
so
true.
It's all a bit messy. And I think what I quite like about the ATP is I think the 250s, they may alter the rankings a little bit. And I understand that where the money is made is the bigger tournaments for the WTA, and that 250s quite often don't make money, especially for the WTA tour. But then at the same time, I mean, I was in Bostar last year with Nadal, Casper Ruud, Andrei Rublev was there as well. You know, there's lots of players who are able to play those tournaments on the ATP, and the rules only really kick in for challengers. So, I mean,
if they want to play, let them play.
Yeah, and I think you shouldn't have to necessarily. The home country rule obviously means that when it comes to the Americans, there's a lot of Americans. There's 4 Americans in the top 10. I mean, if there's a tournament in Poland, probably Iga Swiatek's going to get the 250, especially if it's her dad's tournament. It's a bit of a strange one. So I do think they are shooting themselves in the foot in terms of, shooting the tournament in the foot maybe, as opposed to themselves.
Would you get rid of the rule, or would you adapt it?
I think 2 top 10 players, I wouldn't have too much of a problem if that was the case, or 2 top 20 players. I think otherwise these 250 events will actually...
Who they got to...
Well, exactly. They'll warp the rankings a bit, and maybe they are trying to see if they can actually function without star power, which would be a big shame. So I wouldn't like to see them go. I think they're such a big, important part of the tour, and on the men's tour, it's probably my favourite tournaments to go to. So very sorry to our mailbag... someone who submitted it, the fact that this is the case, but I don't think it's going to change. But I do think that tournaments making it clear that this was why and they're not happy with it will also actually maybe make more of an issue of this, because at the moment it's a bit under the radar.
It is, and we'll see if there are any other situations or scenarios this arises, because it could be something that the tournament, the WTA tour might need to look at. We shall see. But let's move on to talk about Novak Djokovic, because the last time we saw Novak Djokovic on a tennis court, or even in press conference, actually, he had injured himself. And, now we've had some information on, the extent of that injury and when he will be out. Now, it's not completely definitive at the moment. We think he's going to be okay for the French Open, but he's potentially out until Rome or Madrid. So it doesn't feel like the sunshine swing is a realistic prospect for Novak Djokovic, but possibly the clay season, we will see him on the red clay. I mean, what do you make of this news, Chris, in terms of, like, as I say, the Djokovic momentum, Australian Open, and now this happening? What does it mean for Djokovic?
Well, the positive thing is that there are some changes to the news. Obviously, when it was released, we all thought this is a tear. It looks pretty bad on the scans. We all kind of upskilled ourselves in what actually we were looking at from a hamstring X-ray. I'd not seen one before. I now do. I
loved how he put it on his socials, like his for all the experts. It just felt like it had been written by Andy Murray.
It kind of did. Maybe he was involved with that.
I feel like he actually did it. He just hijacked his account.
Yeah, because Murray's done it before, and it also tonally feels a little bit less Djokovic, yes, but more Murray. That's a conspiracy theory that we're working on. Until it's officially denied or confirmed, we will stick with that, Joel. But I think it's positive news that there is talk that he could come back sooner. I don't see that happening, because he does also say, and he has said very clearly, that he is pretty much only going to get out of bed and make his priorities the national team and the slams. And then when he needs form or potentially ranking points that will help him get a better seeding, a bit of a better draw, because you do want to avoid the Sinners, the Alcarazes when you do play in these sorts of matches. But I mean, would I play or do I see him playing Indian Wells in Miami? I really don't. I don't think it makes sense.
I mean, to me, I was actually looking a little bit further than that, and I was thinking about the clay in relation to the grass court season, because still, to me, Wimbledon is his biggest chance of winning another Grand Slam title. And similar to maybe Andy Murray, the things that he was going through, towards the end of his career, that ultimatum basically, do I risk putting my body through the rigors of the red clay, which is one of the more physically demanding surfaces, and sort of risk maybe picking up an injury or putting a lot of effort and wear and tear in my body, so I'm not maybe 100% for the grass season? Or do I just go all in and put priority on the grass? I don't know if we're there just yet, but I feel like that could be quite an interesting ultimatum potentially Djokovic might be facing. But hopefully he would come back sooner.
I mean, that is quite interesting because that obviously was where the injury that caused so much trouble to the rest of his season happened. He did still make the Wimbledon final, but he was wearing that knee support for quite some time. So clay, as you say, Murray skipped it before, prioritizing one more slam. And maybe that is what would make most sense, unless you feel like you are physically completely fine for it. But the reality is you will get more injuries as you get older. You can't really avoid it. You can't stop that from happening. So I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see him on the clay. But do I think he's going to play the French Open? I think he's going to play the majors. I think if Djokovic is in a major draw, I think he's going to think he has a shot at winning it. And I also think going into Wimbledon, you know, Murray did this a couple of times. You might just want some match practice, and that might be more of a warm-up for Wimbledon than actually like the ambition of winning the French, where he hasn't had the most success previously.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting, obviously, Andy Murray in his camp, you know, he's been through this decision making a lot, so it's definitely going to be a voice that he listens to. So yeah, we'll keep all our listeners posted on Novak Djokovic and what happens to him going forward. But we do have tournaments this week. We have them in Rotterdam, Dallas, Abu Dhabi, and we also have the Transylvania Open in Romania. Let's quickly look at the event in Rotterdam, because Carlos Alcaraz is the top seed there, Daniil Medvedev the second seed. I mean, Chris, where are you looking at in terms of this event?
I'm not sure that this will be a great tournament for Alcaraz. I think we might see a little bit of an upset. We do see the local players do really well here. So I think Botic van der Zandschulp might spring another surprise against the Spaniard potentially. But I'd love to see Holger build on what wasn't necessarily the best start in Davis Cup and, you know, push on. And Medvedev, he's got some questions to ask because he has not necessarily played his best tennis yet. The form was a bit, you know, question mark, and he hasn't won a title for quite some time. He's playing Stan right now, has a set point, Stan Wawrinka that is. So it's a stacked draw, and I think it will be interesting to see how people do making the swap to indoor hard.
And yeah, as I say, kind of Dallas, Taylor Fritz is the top seed there. Casper Ruud, the second seed. I said Dubai. People probably picked this up. I said Dubai on our little break. I actually meant Abu Dhabi. I got them the wrong way round. Apologies,
wrong order.
Listeners. Wrong order. Yeah, but we also have the draw out there as well. Rybakina is the top seed there with Badosa, the second seed. So any matchups from there you're excited about in Dallas and Abu Dhabi?
Well, I'm pleased that Raducanu's playing again. She's got a very interesting match against Vondrousova, who's playing with a wild card. So that's the one I'll be glued to the telly watching. And then Cluj, we love it. We'll be looking out for Jacqueline Christian coming out on a cape. You know, that's your favourite moment of the season, Joel. So
yes.
And Hallett
what cape is it going to be this time?
Oh, yeah. And will she have fangs? And Hallett played in the doubles today. She did lose, and I think we might be looking at a potential retirement announcement quite soon because that knee is causing a lot of problems.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, we've just not seen her on the singles circuit at all. I thought
not happened.
It doesn't feel like it's happened so far. So is it going to happen? Yeah, let's see. But yeah, lots of tennis to look forward to. Lots and lots of exciting matchups as well. But we're going to end and wrap up our latest tour catch up there at Tennis Weekly HQ. We hope you've enjoyed the ride with us. Remember to subscribe to us so you don't miss a moment of the ATP and WTA action. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all your favorite podcasting platforms out there. And of course, if you like what you're hearing, then make sure to leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, as well as hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube.
And you can also follow us on social media, as well as on YouTube. We're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and X. And the handle for all of those is Tennis Weekly Pod, or just search Tennis Weekly Podcast and we should come up. And you can also get in touch if you would like to submit to our mailbag. If you do have a question, it's tennisweeklypod@gmail.com. Or you can check out our website to find out more about the podcast, and that's at tennisweekly.co.uk. And that bag didn't go. There is still that bag, Joel.
The bag is still there.
I mean, I'll keep banging on about it, but that's at etsy.com/shop/tennisweeklypodcast. And when that does sell out, we will be looking at a refresh of the merch. So when it goes, then we can update you on what's coming next.
And we will be back next Monday for another tour catch up. So I do hope you can join us for that. But in the meantime, as always, it's goodbye from Chris.
Goodbye.
And it's goodbye from me. We'll see you again soon.